Good afternoon. Welcome to week 5. The African American Heritage House presents week 5, Infrastructure, Building and Maintaining the Physical, Social, and Civic Underpinnings of Society, with today's speaker. Before I begin with the program, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the beautiful surroundings in which we are all situated. As the African American Heritage House acknowledges that we exist on land that indigenous people have inhabited for more than 13,000 years. We lament the history of displacement and annihilation of the Haudenosaunee peoples in particular, knowing that we are the beneficiaries. We also honor the sovereignty of the 6 nations, the Cayuga, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Mohawk, the Seneca, and the Tuscarora. And we prioritize their mission of indigenous sovereignty and decolonization. Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Directors for the African American Heritage House, I am very pleased to be here today. My name is Cecilia Griffin Golden. I am the Program Director for the House, and I'd like to introduce to you the Chair of the Board, Errol Davis, and his lovely wife, Elaine Davis, beside him. If there are other board members here, I'd like to acknowledge them, but in addition, I'd like to acknowledge a former board member, Ernie Mahaffey. Thank you, Ernie, for being here, and everybody. So, who is the African American Heritage House? We are critical friends of the Chautauqua Institution. We work collaboratively to endeavor to build and encourage the diversity of Chautauqua. We work to elevate the voices of marginalized people, in particular African American or Black people, so that their voices are elevated with vibrancy and accuracy. We do this through quality programming, one of which is our porch chats that are held every Sunday at 1 o'clock at the Athenaeum. We have our speaker reception every Tuesday at 3:30 at 40 Scott Avenue. And as you see today, every Wednesday, we have a speaker, and today we have Miss Tonika Johnson. Ms. Johnson is a creative from Chicago's South Side Englewood neighborhood. Her ongoing project, Folded Map, visually investigates disparities among segregated Chicago residents while bringing them together to have a conversation. Debuted as an exhibit at Loyola University Museum of Art in 2018. In 2022, she was named a landmark Illinois influencer for her current Inequity for Sale project that highlights the living history of Greater Englewood homes sold on discriminatory land sale contracts in the 50s and 60s. She is also a lead co-founder of the Englewood Arts Collective and the Resident Association of Greater Englewood. After her presentation today, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. You can do them electronically, doing questions.chq.org. And if you would need or would require paper, the associates will present them to you. We have Sydney Smith and Melanie Thompson, who are the associates. Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson.
Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna cue up some of the amazing audio that I would like to share with you. But before I begin, I want to just let you know that all of the projects that I'm gonna speak to you about today that I've done are about home, my home, which is Chicago. And they pretty much amplify people's understanding of racism and systemic segregation, but how it is perpetuated personally amongst us today. Because oftentimes we look to statistics and data to affirm how inequities continue today, but I would like to help people understand how we perpetuate them in our social networks and amongst each other personally. So to help you understand kind of what my project is, I would like for you to just participate in an activity with me by raising your hands to answer a few questions, okay? Raise your hands if you have heard of Chicago. All right, now, keep your hands raised. And now look around at everybody. That's about everybody, right? Okay. Raise your hands if you have heard of the South Side of Chicago. All right, look around again. That's almost everybody. Okay, now you can put your hands down. Now this next question, I want you to embrace the space that we're in, the reason that we're here, and to be very honest and transparent, because that's what's gonna make the conversation good. Raise your hand if you have been told that the South Side of Chicago is dangerous. All right, now look around. That is how systemic segregation is perpetuated amongst us today, and how it impacts someone like me. I'm from the South Side of Chicago. And so when I meet people and I tell them that I'm from the South Side of Chicago, trust me, I know they're thinking exactly what I asked you. The South Side of Chicago is dangerous. And so in order for you to understand my motivation for creating my project, I want you to look at the map that was handed out to you. Because in Chicago, we love our maps, and we love data, and we love our architecture and our infrastructure. So this is a map of Chicago. We're on a beautiful reticular grid, which means we have corresponding points using our address system. But I want you to pay attention to the colors on the map. Now, from the top of the map to the bottom of the map, that's about 18 miles. Okay, Chicago is huge. The pink purplish color on the map that you see, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly white. The blue that you see on the map, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly black. The orange that you see on the map, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Latino. And the neon green that you see in the center of the map and speckled a little at the top, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Asian. Now, a lot of cities in our country often say, oh, they're the most segregated. But Chicago is the most segregated because our segregation never, ever changes. It only deepens. So this segregation that you see has existed since before my grandmother came to Chicago in the 1960s. So now that you understand that the top part of the map is where predominantly white neighborhoods are, I need you to know that that's what Chicagoans refer to as the North Side, because it's north. And the blue part at the bottom of the map, that's what we refer to as the South Side of Chicago. And the part of the map that is to your left, we call that the West Side of Chicago. So now you all have really learned a lot about Chicago. You can say you know something about the north side, south side, and west side. Now, my project helps people understand what would happen if those two neighborhoods that were many neighborhoods that are 15 miles apart, what it would be like if people from those neighborhoods actually met each other. So I want you to fold your paper, the bottom to the top, just like that. And I want you to crease it in the middle. Okay, now I want you to open it. Where you creased it at, that fold, that's pretty much our downtown area. And on our grid map, that's the 0 point, okay? So that means that when you go from 0 to the top of the map, the numbers start to increase for addresses. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes all the way to 6,000. And the same thing happens when you go down. So 0, the middle of the map, and you go down, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 9,500. So when you fold the map, what happens? Yes, the neighborhoods, they touch each other. And so that's what my project is. It is literally called Folded Map. And so I want to share with you how I conceptually folded the map with people who live in racially and economically different neighborhoods from the north side and my home neighborhood, Inglewood, on the south side. What happens when they decide to meet each other and just ask each other basic questions? So I'm going to have Melanie pass out another sheet I want you to look at, and I'm going to introduce to you Wade and Nanette. Wade, he is a middle-aged white man who lives in the pink purplish part of the map. And Nanette is a middle-aged black woman who lives on the blue part of the map, specifically from my neighborhood called Inglewood. And you all are gonna see how they look. Now, mind you, when I decided to do this project, I really was just photographing homes, because like I told you, I'm into architecture, infrastructure, and so I photographed homes that are similar in address, but in racially and economically different neighborhoods, so people could see the difference. And I'll show you an example of that, but first I want to talk to you about Wade and Nanette. I would soon call the people that participated in my project map twins. And raise your hand if you have a photo of Wade and Nanette. Raise your hand if you do. Okay, for the ones that don't, I want you to pass it on to them so we could just share so everybody could see Wade and Nanette. Now, I had about 5 sets of what I would call map twins meet each other. And they're all from these different neighborhoods. And I asked them 5 basic questions, really. I asked them, how did you come to live in your neighborhood? I asked them, is there a place of peace in their neighborhood? I asked them, is everything that they need on a day-to-day basis accessible in their neighborhood? I asked them, how would you even describe your neighborhood? And then I asked all of them the question, how much did your house cost? Or how much do you pay for rent? And I asked them those questions separately and then together when they met each other. So I want to play a clip of Wade, Nanette, and Wade's wife, Jennifer, who isn't in the photo because she was at work that day. I want to play a clip of them answering the question of, how did you come to live in your neighborhood? And as I'm playing this, if you have to close your eyes and let the breeze, relax you, then do that. But I want you to just know that Wade and Nanette were at each other's homes, specifically at Nanette's house, when they were answering this question. Each of the map twins, they met each other at each other's homes. And so this is them answering the question of how did you come to live in your neighborhood at Nanette's home in Inglewood.
I decided that I wanted to be a homeowner. So I looked in Inglewood, and Inglewood was what I could afford. So I moved to Inglewood.
And how much was your home?
At that time, it was, well, why am I saying at that time? It was $61,000.
And what about you, Wade and Jennifer? How did you come to live in your neighborhood?
We wanted to live in a house. We wanted to have a green space. We looked at another number of neighborhoods in Chicago and decided we really loved the feel of Edgewater. So that's why we purchased here. Anything else?
I think I remember when we came here, there was a backyard and there was a neighbor next door, hanging out in the backyard. I think they were having like lunch with wine or something like that, and that was nice, and I like that part of the neighborhood feel.
And how much was your home when you purchased it?
$535,000.
So to just do a quick recap, this was their first conversation, and Nanette said her home cost $61,000, and Wade and Jennifer's home was $530 plus. So you can imagine sharing that detail in front of each other inside of the home that was $61,000. How awkward it could have felt. But Wade, Nanette, and Jennifer, they continued to talk. And they talked about their shared interest in beer gardens, organic food. And then they started to talk about taxes, trying to understand how come there wasn't a lot of grocery stores in Nanette's neighborhood. And so after they talked for a little while, they kind of forgot I was in the room. And that's when I knew I wanted to do another set of map twins, because I was like, I want to see where this goes. So I'm going to have Melanie introduce you to another set of map twins. Maurice and his North Side map twins, John and Paula. Now, before you get the photo, I'm going to tell you this is kind of where stereotypes can apply. They definitely are as different as they look. Maurice is a young black man from Inglewood, and John and Paula are an older Jewish couple in the North Side neighborhood of Rogers Park. And they decided that they want to participate in this project, and they decided to meet each other. And so I'm going to allow you a chance to just see them for a second before I share their audio of them answering the question of what's missing in your neighborhood. So for those that have the photo of Maurice, John, and Paula, raise your hand if you see what I mean, that they are very different. Okay. I definitely don't think they listen to the same music. I definitely don't think they have beer gardens in common. I definitely didn't think that. But I'm going to share with you audio of them answering the question, what's missing in your neighborhood? And the first person that you're going to hear speaking is Maurice, the young black man from Inglewood.
I wouldn't mind seeing a theater, a bowling alley, maybe some type of center for the youth to kind of go hang out at, or have some things to do when they get out of school, or to be able to be exposed to different artistic options to just kind of give them something to do. Aside kind of like hanging outside and finding different ways or getting into trouble. Or those trouble even being an option, because if you have nothing to do, of course, it's like there's trouble waiting right over there. So
Yeah.
Just some good suggestions.
yeah.
I don't know. What are we? Yeah, a lot of our needs are met here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could think of something, but yeah.
So, hello. Oh. So, if you could tell, John and Paula, they couldn't even think of anything. All of their needs were met. And so, just someone shout out, what was one of the things that Maurice said he would like to see in his neighborhood that stood out to you? The neighborhood center, bowling alley, basic stuff. And I am here to affirm that Maurice is right. Our home neighborhood does not have any of those things. And it is what you would consider a food desert, meaning that my neighborhood is one of the largest neighborhoods in Chicago. It's over 6 square miles, and we only have a handful of grocery stores. So even though I had brought together more map twins, I do want to share with you the reflection that Maurice, John, and Paula had after they met each other. Now, mind you, I did this project in 2018. It's 2023. All of them still keep in touch to varying degrees. Maurice, John, and Paula, they text each other, see how each other's doing. Maurice decided to take action and create a lot of community activities for what he felt youth didn't have, and now he has an organization called Think Outside the Block. And John and Paula, they come support it when he throws events in Greater Inglewood. But I'm gonna let you hear their response of how it felt to participate in the project just 2 years after they met each other.
A genuine connection, right? It was like nothing forced or fake. We had a conversation, learned each other's differences in community. The things that I talked about or maybe spoke about that I would like to see here in Inglewood, they already had out there. When we spoke, to know that they couldn't even imagine being in the community, not having the things that, I guess, basic necessity. So, yeah, it was interesting.
I guess it is really striking, how lucky we are, and we certainly don't think of ourselves as living in a rich neighborhood, but compared to some, we are very privileged. Yeah.
And so that was a quick snippet of just a reflection they had out of a very long conversation. But I also want to play for you the reflection that Wade, Nanette, and Jennifer had. They're practically family now. I told everyone that participated in the project, you all do not have to become best friends. This is a little weird experiment. You don't have to keep in touch after this. I'm not requiring to do so. But Wade, Nanette, and Jennifer, they've remained friends, and they even expanded my project without me knowing. They created block twins. They decided to introduce their neighbors to each other and invited me to the event. And I'll play a little excerpt of what that event sounded like. But first, I'm going to allow you to listen to them share how it made them feel to hear each other's answers and to talk to each other. This is Nanette speaking.
It felt like they were genuine and sincere. It felt like that they heard me. They can hear what I'm saying. They understand what I'm talking about. They saw where I lived, and it wasn't about that you feel sorry for me or anything. It's about I understand that it's a situation, or let me rephrase. I I felt like they understood that because, like I said earlier, because you live in Inglewood, it doesn't mean that you don't want some of the same things that they want or they have, or the amenities that they have. And I think that they understood that. That's what it felt like to me. So.
Yeah, I hope that that's right. That's kind of you to say. But yeah, absolutely. It brought home to me that things I've already heard and read about, but on a much more personal level, about the inequity in the way these neighborhoods are invested in and maintained and what have you. It's clearly an inequity, and from my perspective, you can't help but feel honestly a little bit of guilt about that. But I think more importantly, there's an imperative for those who feel like me, and I would imagine most of the city of Chicago does. We've certainly all, or so many of us call ourselves progressives, right? That we act accordingly, and that we hold our leadership accountable and vote responsibly and vote for fair government with integrity and transparency.
And so that was a year after they met each other. And now I want to share with you the event that they invited me to when they expanded my project to include block twins. If you can recall, Wade said that, we should act accordingly, we should do something. So they decided to take action, and I'm just gonna play a little bit of Wade explaining the event that they organized.
It's a concept that's been building for about 3 years. It started with Tonika Johnson's folded map project. My wife Jennifer and I were the first north side map twins with our neighbor Nanette here on the 6100 block of South Bishop. And we've kept up the relationship for the last 3 years, and we've talked about what we can do to build on it in order to close the gaps between the neighborhoods in Chicago with regard to social justice, economic equity, and what have you.
We started talking about putting a group together and somewhat modeling after Tonika's folded map. We decided that we wanted to do like block twins. And I just believe if people give it a chance, everybody can have it. You just have to give it a chance.
So that was a few years ago, and since then, Nanette started a small consignment store in Inglewood, and Wade and Jennifer helped her do fundraising for it. Wade just had his 58th birthday party at Nanette's store. So these are small things that have happened as a result of the project, but I really consider these things to be very big and to offer hope that we can make change. And oftentimes we think that change can only happen through policy and laws, but those things haven't gotten us to where we want to be. And that's because I truly believe the issue started with people, and it has to end with people. And people meeting, talking, learning how to listen is the only way we can create the movements that are necessary to push policy forward. Because you can't understand what people need and how important it is if you don't talk to them, if you don't listen to them. And so what was really important for me to help Chicago specifically, but using my city as a template for the rest of the country in order to really tackle the issue of how segregation impacts us all, not just black and brown communities, but the white communities in Chicago. I did a project called Don't Go. And the Don't Go project, myself with a dear friend of mine who's a sociologist called Dr. Maria Creason, her and I interviewed 30 people during the pandemic, most of them young white professionals and transplants to Chicago. And all of them had been given the advice that you had been given to not go to the South Side, or that, oh, the South Side of Chicago is dangerous. And so one of those people that I interviewed was Joey. And you all are going to see him and how he looks right now. This project asked all of the individuals, who gave you that advice? Who told you that the South Side was dangerous? And how long did you listen to that advice before you disrupted it? And so each of the interviews were very touching, very transparent. Everyone revealed honest truths about their first memory of learning anti-blackness, their first time that they were told that the South Side of Chicago was dangerous, and the first time that they realized that, oh, it's a predominantly black neighborhood, and also how they struggled with trying to reckon with the fact that ultimately that's racist. So I want to share Joey's realization for you, just to provide a little context. He was a transplant to Chicago, and he was given the advice, don't go to the South Side. And if you just refer to your Chicago map for a minute, that blue bottom part of the map, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, I'm an artist, I was great at visual arts, English, and history, but the blue part of the map, the bottom part, that's majority of Chicago. Am I right? I mean, that's a huge chunk of Chicago if you're told to not go to Chicago. And Joey was a piano repairman. So he quickly understood that I'm leaving out a huge market if I don't go to the South Side. So that's what caused him to not take the advice anymore. And this is him sharing his story of a call he received from an older lady in my home neighborhood of Inglewood needing her piano serviced. All of this is a practice in learning how to listen and be corrected. This is a good lesson. So I want you all to take your time, listen to Joey, explain his story.
Miss Jones asked me, she's like, hi, she's like, I want to get piano service. I said, okay. I'm like, you know, where in Chicagoland are you and all that? She's like, I'm in Inglewood, do you service my area? And I said, well, I'm kind of new to the city still, and you know, the business is new. I've never been to Inglewood, but you know, let's get something on the books. And she's like, oh great, so we set up the appointment. Where I'd moved to, I didn't get my truck until 09. This was like 07 when I got out of school, okay? So it's just me, my 40-pound bag of tools, on a Western Avenue bus, all the way down to 73rd Street. Western Avenue and 73rd.
73rd Street.
Western. Just north of the tracks. North of the tracks. And I get off, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm tracing this back to what my roommates and their friends had told me since I had moved here. Don't go west of here, don't go south of there. And I'm tracing this back, and I'm like, okay, this is where they told me not to go. I guess we're going to see how this goes. You know, I wanted to work, baby. I wanted to work. You know, I didn't care where it was, really. So I just wanted to work. So I get off the bus, and I'm walking further, west. And as I'm walking on 73rd, because she lived on, my client lived on like a little side street there. And as I'm walking, I noticed like a few empty lots, whatever, and the homes were just beautiful. They were gorgeous. And I'm like, well, here I am. I'm taking this all in. I'm looking around. And this was an area that I was told that if I was white, it was automatic that I was going to be shot, robbed, and killed within minutes. And all these things were going to happen to me. And there's just drug cartels and violence and all this stuff. And I got to be honest with you, I was kind of disappointed because I didn't see any of that stuff. I didn't see any of it. And I'm thinking, I'm walking, and like there were kids playing in the street. There were elderly folk having coffee or breakfast on the front porch. And so I'm walking to Miss Jones' house. I get in, and she was so nice. She took good care of me. She put out like a plate of cookies and just, I had water, cookies, and she just kept offering. She was so sweet. I remember clear as day. And so I was there for a couple hours. This is the piano that had been neglected for years. It just sat. So I'm wrapping up service, and I remember she got kind of emotional when I was wrapping up, because she said, I want to thank you for all your hard work today. I didn't want to tell you this on the phone, but you were about the 6th or 7th technician I called, because I couldn't get anyone to come over here. And I'm like, my heart kind of stopped a little bit. I'm like, you're kidding. She's like, just people won't come here. They won't, they won't service our area. She goes, and then she followed up with, we're not the only community that suffers from this, just so you know. And I'm like, well, just so you know, you can call me anytime. I have no problem. I'm here. Just you let me know when you need anything.
So that was Joey's story, and that was just for simple piano service. But I do want to let you all know that that goes across the board with every kind of service. If you're a homeowner and you have something broken down that you need repaired, a lot of us go through the same thing that Ms. Jones goes through. And oftentimes when they do come to repair something, it's usually higher than what is normally priced. So these are all of the nuanced ways in which segregation and racism continues systemically amongst all of us personally. And the small things that we can do to combat it is to, one, just challenge people who say blanket statements like the South Side, the West Side of Chicago is dangerous. And then also to just question, just ask yourself, how could that be true? The whole thing? And then I want you to refer and think to that map. So as I close, I hope that you all just think about these 2 projects of mine, Folded Map and Don't Go, and how they can be used as a reference as you start to expand your thinking about these issues, and how they can assist you in furthering some difficult conversations that you might have with others, because that's the work. That's the work, having those conversations, learning how to be corrected, learning how to listen, learning how to say the thing and be okay with someone telling you that's not right. We all had to go through that. So I do want to allow some time for us to speak with each other, ask and answer questions. So I just want you to think about what resonates with you, even if it's not in the form of a question, if it's a word, and I'm going to hand it over to you all so we can have a conversation. Thank you.
The first question from the audience is, where can we watch the videos of your project?
Yes, so I call the video social justice reality TV, because let me tell you, the audio is not enough. You have to see people's facial expressions and body language, and you can see the hour-long footage of all of the map twins meeting each other at foldedmapproject.com. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in Folded Map Twins, and the hour-long video will pop up. And then I can also share the link, and then maybe later can send it out. But if you're, really curious, you can just Google Folded Map Twin, and those two should pop up.
Thank you. How did you recruit the map twins?
So as I've said, I'm from the South Side neighborhood of Inglewood. I rep it hard, even got it tattooed on me. So quite naturally, it was very easy for me to find people in Inglewood. So Folded Map, I pretty much use my home neighborhood, since it's one of the largest neighborhoods in Chicago, as the ringer. And so I decided which blocks on the north side, 15 miles north, that I wanted to pair with the blocks that I identified in my home neighborhood. And so once I found someone on the blocks in my neighborhood that was willing to participate, I literally just thought about, who do I know that lives on that block that knows somebody that lives on that block? So that's how I recruited the Inglewood people. And so I was just actually sharing with Melanie at dinner yesterday how I recruited the North Side participants. Now, I went to a very diverse high school, so I know a lot of people who live on the North Side, white, black, different nationalities, but the blocks I had picked for my project, I actually didn't know anybody. So I live on the South Side, driving 15 miles every day just to recruit people. I was like, I can't do this. So I decided, well, I'll just write a cute note to the 20 or so homes on a couple of the blocks that I want to find people on, right? Like a personal handwritten note, that's sweet, right? So I wrote a note explaining them this weird little project, and I signed it, and I put it in a blank envelope, and I put it in the mailboxes, and I didn't hear anything. And then one day I said, what's going on? So I put my handwritten note in another house, and it just so happened that someone was coming home who lived in that house, and they opened the mailbox. I watched them read the letter because I was still parked across the street. And they looked up from the letter and looked around, and they looked scared. And I was like, oh my God, this is creepy. It's not sweet. I can't do handwritten letters and unmarked envelopes. Oh my God. They probably think I'm watching them, which I am. So I decided to do a typed letter explaining that I'm an artist and photographer with like actual printouts of my work and an email that they can. And so I put it in an envelope, and within about a week after I passed out maybe 80 envelopes, I started getting responses right away. And prior to that, I was like, oh my gosh, they're so racist, they don't want to participate. But no, it was just creepy. So after I got about the first 8 to 10 people, I didn't even answer calls anymore because I was like, I got enough people. So that's ultimately how I recruited the North Side people. So all of them knew what the project was. They agreed to it. They understood that it was a weird project, that they were going to go to a neighborhood Inglewood specifically, and in Chicago, if you all think that you've heard about the South Side of Chicago, in Chicago, the neighborhood that gets spoken about is my neighborhood. So people who were willing to participate in this project were really doing, you know, a courageous act, actually, because it's constantly on the news about very specific neighborhoods, and mine is one of them. So, yeah, that's how I recruited people.
Thank you. You've described the project in Chicago well.
Oh, thank you.
And so the question is, can this be replicated in other cities?
Yes, I have actually had people from out of the country say, you should fold the globe. You can do it. They have all of these ways in which I could do it. But specifically in particularly Midwestern cities, I've gotten a lot of people from Detroit, Cincinnati, even this organization in San Antonio, Texas. They reached out to me to replicate the project, and I did a little test to see if I could do it, and it can be replicated. So even though the project is using Chicago's unique grid map, it's really the concept, you know? So in order to help people understand how they can replicate it, I'm thinking of creating a guide that I told some people yesterday that is tentatively called Find Your Fold. Because wherever segregation exists, there's something that usually separates it, whether it's a street, a landmark, something. So if you just find whatever that is and then just fold it, yeah, you can ultimately replicate folded map. But some of the considerations in talking to people about how to replicate this project that I didn't necessarily think of when I was doing the project, because it was coming from me. And in explaining to people if they want to replicate it, one of the things that I'm trying to learn how to express in this guide is that it has to be led by the person from the neighborhood that's most disinvested in. It cannot be led by someone from the pink purplish part of the map, even though you want to, you know? And even if you want to, just find someone, your map twin, who wants to do it with you, but they have to lead it. And so that was a consideration that I had to think about, because I'm me. I was the person from the most disinvested neighborhood, and I came up with the project, so I didn't think about, oh, you do need a me in the other places. So that's one of the criterias of replicating it, is that you have to find your map twin, and the map twin to lead it has to be the person from the most disinvested neighborhood. So that's just a couple of the ways in which it can be replicated. But yes, you totally can. I have an organization that I've been working with for the past years, my little guinea pig. They live in Rockford, Illinois. It's an organization there. And actually, it was a predominantly white organization that wanted to lead it, and that's how I learned to have the conversation about, that's cool, but no, you gotta have. So they found their map twin, and it's a predominantly black organization. It was actually 2 church affiliate organizations, and you know, they've been rocking and rolling ever since. So I'm just monitoring their progress as the test subjects. But yeah, someone from DC actually contacted me, and even though they have a different kind of map, it's kind of like quadrants, you could fold that. It's pretty much origami, you know, you can fold it whatever way you like. It's not scientific, it's really art, okay? So you can do it however you want.
Thank you. So there are some Chicagoans in the audience.
Hey!
And they want to ask a couple of questions.
Yes.
So first is a statement: Chicago neighborhoods are fragmented by gerrymandering.
Yes.
The Chicago Advisory Redistricting Commission was an amazing collaboration across race, ethnicity, and from all parts of Chicago.
Yes.
No question here, but they're hoping good things are ahead for wonderful Chicago.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I want to add something before you go to the question.
Okay.
So people always talk about Chicago's violence, and a lot of people don't talk about Chicago's strong history of multiracial organizing. I mean, we really are like the leaders in it. And a lot of the movements that have been important to our country actually have been multiracial, with very strong, significant white allies that we do not learn about or talk about. I often refer to the Underground Railroad. That was a multiracial movement led by, Black people, Harriet Tubman, but it was multiracial. It could not have been successful without that collaboration. I often refer to the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton in Chicago. As pro-Black as he was, he still created the Rainbow Coalition. That was his vision, where he partnered with poor whites who also were being neglected. So, and then Black Panthers and the Latin Berets, like Chicago has a strong history of multiracial organizing that needs to be amplified and uplifted so that people can know we don't have to imagine it. It has already happened. We just have to learn about it and replicate it and use those movements as an example. And of course, the big one, the civil rights movement, that was a multiracial movement. So I just wanted to big up Chicago and our organizational history. And yes, my home neighborhood, Greater Inglewood, is one of the most politically fragmented neighborhoods in Chicago. We had 6 aldermanic wards. And a lot of people who are not familiar with that, they would think, oh, that's great. You have 6 people representing your neighborhood. No, it means that my neighborhood is cut up into 6 wards that are included in other wards that are larger. So we really don't have a strong voice, but that is changing. We are now down to 5 wards. And now all of those aldermen, even though they're part of other larger wards, they have started to have meetings to come together and talk about improvements in Greater Inglewood. So yes, it is slowly improving. But I think they had a question. Did they have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
So here is a question, though. I live in Chicago, Albany Park, without a car. Our transit system is also segregated, and it's hard to move efficiently between outer neighborhoods from north to south. How can we advocate for changing that system to make connection easier?
Well, one, off top, it's an organization called Elevated Chicago, and this is specifically what they do. They have regular meetings about the public transit system, and the reason the public transit system is segregated, it's because Chicago's segregated. So it kind of always goes back to individuals learning about other neighborhoods. And so one way that this particular person who lives in Albany Park, which is Southwest, what they could possibly do is one day they could do the Folded Map Action Kit. It's an expansion of Folded Map. I had so many people who were like, oh, I want to be a map twin. Can you help us? And I was like, I'm not going to be doing that for the rest of my life. But I will create a way for you to do it. And so I created the Folded Map Action Kit, which is literally a list of errands I suggest people run in a neighborhood that is racially and economically different than their own, because oftentimes in segregated cities, people feel uncomfortable going to the neighborhood where they're the minority. And so you don't really get a chance to learn about the neighborhood or people from it. So I figured an easy way to do it solo is just go do stuff you would do in your neighborhood in another neighborhood. So errands like go buy lotion. You'd be surprised to find out how very different that experience is. Go buy organic apple. Go to a bank and take out $20. I have a list of errands that speak to how each industry and sector treats neighborhoods differently, which obviously food, banking, and even public services. Go to the library. So that way you will be around residents who could be your potential map twin, but also you can understand how they view their neighborhood based off of the condition of these services that should be equitable across all neighborhoods, but often aren't. So that way, you don't have to imagine. You can literally just go yourself and do your own investigation. So that's the PhotoMap Action Kit. You can also find that at photomapproject.com. Or you can even go to City of Chicago's website, because I recently partnered with the City of Chicago to provide the action kit for all Chicagoans, since it was a small little expansion of my project, and the Lori Lightfoot administration, close to the end of her term, reached out to me wanting to expand it, and now the current administration is promoting it. So the PhotoMap Action Kit, go do it.
Okay. Thank you. So Tonika, you have presented to us a real solution for how to address systemic racism. And we applaud you for that.
Thank you.
I would like to encourage you in the audience to attend tomorrow's Chautauqua Dialogue at 40 Scott, where we will continue to talk about what we've heard today. We want to hear your reflections, your ideas, and we can certainly share them with Tonika. And then finally, Tonika, us 429, can you briefly discuss the Artists Collective you founded?
Oh, so Inglewood Arts Collective is a collective of 11 of my friends who are all very successful, self-employed artists, and we really just came together to challenge the narrative, because when people think of my home neighborhood, they seem to think of only criminals and victims of gun violence. They don't think about anything in between. They don't think it's different kind of personalities, different kind of lived experiences. And us being artists, we were just like, we literally lived and grew up in this neighborhood. So let's create a collective, create a website, and just see what happens. And so we did that, and then we started doing artistic activations. But ultimately, we just came together to change the narrative, to literally interrupt the algorithm for when people type in Inglewood, that just horrible news stories wouldn't pop up. We wanted people to know, yes, it's actual artists from Inglewood. Like, how crazy is it that people don't think that someone like myself is from a neighborhood that they've heard has gun violence? So that's a huge thing that everyone has to learn how to train their mind out of, is when you hear a neighborhood is bad, first of all, question it, and then two, stop being surprised when you run into people who are from said neighborhood that doesn't match what you've heard, because it just is a sign of how all of this is perpetuated, and quite honestly, it's hurtful. So we literally came together to challenge that narrative, and since then we have done so many artistic activations in our neighborhood. We've helped do Arts Village at an annual Inglewood Music Festival event. We've done partnerships with the City of Chicago for a huge mural, viaduct redo in Inglewood, and now we're just trying to figure out other ways we can support Black and brown artists in the South Side and West Side of Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
CHQ Assembly is made possible through the collaboration and innovation of Chautauqua institutions' full-time and part-time staff, seasonal staff, and many volunteers, as well as participants like you, whose engagement, gifts, and subscriptions sustain our mission.